Man, I cannot find a single good video that shows me how to use Xlights. Have you tried watching this one yet? Oh, okay, that looks like a pretty decent video. Let me search that one up. 2.5 hours? You think I have 2.5 hours to watch a whole video about Xlights? Well, why didn't you just say something from the beginning? Just keep watching this quick start guide in this video that we're already in right now. What video are you even talking about? Where would the camera be? Hey everyone, thanks for watching How To Pixel. My name is Nick, and today we are diving into the realm of Xlights. Now, I've already made a huge full guide for Xlights twice. So why am I making another one? Because both of those ones were over 2.5 hours long. So I'm hoping that this video will give you a much more condensed version of those other Xlights videos, and just enough information to get you going with the basics in Xlights. Then when you're ready, or whenever you have the free time, you can go and watch one of those longer Xlights videos that goes over every single button and setting in Xlights. This video is going to be split up into different sections, each going over some key important details within Xlights, so please feel free at any time to use the timestamps in the scrub bar and the description below so you can get to whatever piece of the video you want to see right now. But let's just get started with what is Xlights. Xlights is a free and open source application that was created so you could program tons of awesome light shows with E1.31 controllers, DMX controllers, and more. It runs on Windows, Mac, and Linux, and is debatably the most popular software for creating amateur light shows. It allows you to have so much control over what your light show looks like with 56 built-in effects, all with their own array of settings that can have thousands of different combinations. Some effects even allow you to import other things such as videos, images, shader files, and a whole bunch of other things. And all of these effects can be created in time with audio, so you can sync it to music, or it could just be a silent animation. On top of all this, you can virtually set up your display in Xlights to see exactly what it would look like in real life. You don't need to have any controllers, any lights, or even any idea of what you want your light show to look like to start using Xlights. You can mess around with different models and props, put them on a 2D picture of your house, or get an even better view of what it would look like by creating a 3D model to add all of your props to. If you program your whole show but decide you don't want certain models or props you put in it, you can easily remove them without a problem. Or if you've already programmed your whole show but now you want to add more props, you can also easily add those in, and it won't mess up anything you've already done. So it's clear that Xlights is packed full of features, and they make it super easy to set up your whole display when you don't have a single idea of what you want it to look like yet. So now we're going to get into how you use Xlights, and we're going to start all of that with the installation process. To install Xlights on your computer, you're going to want to go to xlights.org, and once you get there, click the big red download page button. Once you're on the download page, look for the version of Xlights you need for your computer. Like I said, it runs on Windows, Mac, and Linux. I'm using Windows, so I'm going to click right here where it says download 64-bit 2025. Some version number. Xlights receives tons of small and large updates, so by the time you're watching this video, that version number is more than likely going to be different. But most of the information in this video will still be relevant. Once it's downloaded, you can go ahead and install Xlights. This process may look a little bit different depending on which operating system you're using, but just follow the simple steps that it shows. When it finishes, it will probably open up the release notes, which you can just close out of those if you don't want to read them, and then it will start to boot up Xlights. The very first time Xlights opens, it'll ask you to select a show directory, or some people call it a show folder. This is a folder that contains all of your data for Xlights, every little bit of it. all of your program files, all of your house layout information, all of your music and videos and anything you'll be using in your program files, all of that will be put in this show folder. So create or select a folder that you want just for Xlights and all the information to run your show. You can change this in the future, but I highly recommend against it. We can save that discussion for another video when we have more time. I have this empty demo folder here, and I'll use this to show you what Xlights looks like after just installing it. So once that's selected, Xlights should open up and it'll look something like this. Now we can move on to the next section of this video, which is about the 3 main tabs in Xlights. So in Xlights, near the top, you'll see these 3 different tabs. There's the controller tab, the layout tab, and the sequencer tab. These are the 3 main tabs that you use to set up and program your entire light show. Xlights always opens up to the controller tab first, and this is probably where everything gets the most technical. This is where you tell Xlights which controller or controllers you'll be using, how all of the lights will be connected to it, and in which order. You set up the channels, the universes, and all of this other stuff, which add up to be a lot of confusing garble. Thankfully though, you don't need to set up any of this to get started in Xlights. And actually, I recommend not setting up anything for now. You can always come back here at any time to readjust your settings and controllers, and it won't mess with anything you've already programmed. So what I say is start designing your show, start programming it and figuring out all the awesome things you want to do with it. Then once you have the knowledge of how the controller tab works, you know which controllers you're going to buy, and how you're going to wire it all up with your lights, then you can come back here and set everything up at that point. So since we don't need anything in this tab right now, I'm going to save all the instructions for it for a different video. That way we can keep this one short. Moving on to the layout tab, this is where you set up and design your whole light show. No programming happens here. This is just where you put all of your models and props on the virtual image of your house so you can get an idea of what it will look like. The reason you do this is so Xlights can properly render all of the different effects onto your models, and also so you'll have a way to see what your light show will look like as you're programming it with those effects on it. We'll come back to this tab in a few moments to see exactly how to use it. But let's move on to the sequencer tab. The sequencer tab is the last of the 3 main tabs, and this is where you'll be spending 95% of your time in Xlights. This is where you actually program the lights and place all of the effects onto the timeline so Xlights can render it all into a program file. You can then use the house preview window to see exactly what all those effects will look like on your house without having to set up anything and go actually test it. You can use this to adjust all of your effects and make them look exactly how you want them to. Now that you know what all the tabs are for, let's go back to the layout tab so we can start designing a show, and then we'll come back to the sequencer to actually program it. On the layout tab, there are 4 main sections to it. The first one is this big black box here, which is the preview window. This is where in a few moments you'll see what your display will look like with all of the models and props you put on it. Above that is a list of all of the models you can add to your show, and you use these icons to click it and add it to the preview window. The section to the top left will show you all the models you currently have on your display and in the preview window right now, and you can use this list to manage them and edit them and change all their properties. Finally, the bottom left is where all the settings will show up for each model when you click it, so you can go and edit those properties. If you select a model from the list of models that are in your display, you'll be able to edit the settings for that specific model. But if you have no models selected currently, then the settings for the entire preview window will show up here. The first thing you'll want to do is add a background picture of your house. So to do that, you can hit background image and then click on the 3 dots. You can then select a picture from your file manager. I recommend going outside and taking a picture of your whole house, so you can use that as a reference when you're putting all of your models into the preview window. It's also very important that this picture is inside your show folder, so make sure you move that in there. If it's not, it can cause a whole bunch of headaches in the future, and it can also get lost. I'll use this old picture I have here as a reference for my display I'll set up. You can then go and change all of the image's properties, such as the size and the brightness for it. I recommend turning down the brightness as low as possible so you can still see everything, but it's very dark. That way, it'll look like it's nighttime when you're looking at the virtual rendering of your display. I should note that right now we are in a 2D layout, and you can switch to a 3D layout if you'd like, but it is a lot more advanced, so I recommend staying away from it for a little bit unless you really want to try it. If so, I do have a video talking about it up here, but I'm going to stick with 2D for this video. For some basic instructions on how to move the layout around, you can use your scroll wheel to zoom in and out, and if you have the ability, you can click down on your scroll wheel to move it up and down and left or right. If you left click and drag your mouse, you'll get this selection box that you can use to select multiple models and do whatever you'd like with them. To add a prop to your layout, you can click any of these icons for the model you'd like once, and then you can left click and drag across your display to add that model somewhere. You can then click and drag the green and blue dots to move the model around, resize it, or rotate it. And then to add another model, just repeat the process and click another icon, left click and drag across the preview window to add it. If you want to add the same model multiple times, you can click that icon twice, and then every time you left click and drag, it will create that model. To stop creating the model, click the icon again to turn that feature off. To get to the settings for a specific model you have in your preview, you can click on that model in the list on the left to open up the settings for it. Here you can change the name of the model, how many lights, aka nodes, are in the model, and a ton of other properties for it. If you want to delete a model you've added, just right click that model in the list and then go and click delete model. Another cool thing Xlights allows you to do is to group multiple models together so you can program them all at once. To do this, right click anywhere in the model list on the left side of the screen and click add empty group. You can then come down to the settings window and go to the bottom to move models from the list into the group by using these arrows. If you want to add a model into the group, just click the model and then click the arrow pointing to the right to move it over. If you want to move a model out of the group, click the model that's in that group and click the left arrow to move it back to the list. Now at this point, it's up to you to be creative and design your show to look however you want. Feel free to make it as crazy as possible or as simple as possible. And remember that anything can be easily changed at any point, so feel free to have fun and just mess around with it at first. I'm going to go and quickly make a little display for this video, and then we can go take a look at the sequencer tab to see how you program it once you have your display designed. So here's a little layout I spent some time designing so that we can program it for this video. So now let's move into the sequencer tab. When you get to the sequencer tab, almost everything is going to be grayed out because you don't have a sequence open right now, so it won't let you change any settings or do anything with this tab. If you're wondering what a sequence means, it's basically a term for a single program file that contains all of the data to do something with your light show. Normally, people will make one single song be a single sequence. Up at the top left, there are some important buttons to know about to create and manage sequences. The yellow document is the Create Sequence button, and anytime you want to make a new sequence, you click this button. The green folder opens up any sequences you've already made, so you can click this and then go into your file manager to look for any past sequences you've made. The blue document is the Save button, and the two red documents are the Save As button. Finally, the color palette is the Render button. More on that in a minute. So let's go and create a new sequence, and we'll do this by clicking the Create Sequence button. The first thing you need to decide is if you want this sequence to be a musical sequence or an animation sequence. A musical sequence allows you to select an audio track and sync all of the effects to that track, or an animation allows you to just create effects without any song or music in the background. I'm going to click musical sequence, and then it will open up your file manager so you can select an audio track to go with the sequence. I have this copyright-free audio track that I'll use for this demo today. Now, just like with the picture in the layout tab, you need to make sure that all of your audio files and music files are in your show folder as well. This will just save you from so many different headaches, and it makes things a lot easier, so I recommend please put your music and audio files in your show folder. Next, you have to decide if you want the sequence to run at 20 frames per second or 40 frames per second. There's a lot of different pros and cons to each of them, and I made a whole separate video about it right here, which I recommend watching at some point. But if you don't understand it right now, I recommend just sticking with 20 for the moment until you know the pros and cons. So I'll click 20 FPS, and then finally make sure that this box is set to all models. And then you can click quick start, and the sequence is made. Once the sequence is created, you'll be bombarded with a bunch of different windows and settings and all these different buttons that can seem so confusing. Since I'm assuming you're just starting out with Xlights though, we don't need a lot of these different windows to create simple sequences. They are used to create more advanced, cool-looking sequences, but to make some simple sequences, you don't need a lot of them. So for now, I recommend closing layer blending, layer settings, and model preview. This will leave you with 4 different sections left. The house preview window allows you to see exactly what your display will look like with all the effects on it. It almost works like a video, and you can play it, see what it will look like, you can go back and replay sections, pause it, all the things like that. So any programming you do at all will show up on the house preview for the sequence. This big section right here is the timeline, and the timeline will have all of your models listed on the left and your audio track listed above it. If you selected an animation sequence, then this section up here will be left blank. The timeline is where you put all of your different effects onto the models to make your sequence. This window here is the effects settings window, and this is where you adjust all the settings for each effect. More on that in a minute. And then finally, you have the color section, and this is where you select which colors are going to be used for each of the effects. Now, any of these windows can be moved around and adjusted in size, and you can even pop them out from the main window on Xlights. What I personally like to do is have my entire house preview on its own separate monitor, and then all of the settings and timeline on another monitor. That way I can have a full large view of what my house will look like. For now though, since you can only watch this YouTube video on one single screen, I'll keep the layout like this. To play or pause your sequence, you can use this section of buttons right here. These are obviously the play, pause, and stop buttons, and these buttons will take you to the first and last frame of the sequence. The replay section button will allow you to replay any section that you have highlighted. To highlight part of the sequence, you can left click anywhere on the audio track and move left or right to expand or shrink the size of this highlighted part. Additionally, you can single left click anywhere at all on the audio track to move the playhead, and then use the play button or press the space bar to play the sequence from right there. Finally, you can also hold the control key and zoom in and out so you can get a better look at a specific section of the sequence or view the whole entire thing at once. Now that we finally got through all of the different elements of the sequencer tab, let's actually look at how you put effects on the timeline to make your house light up. The way you do this is by left-clicking any of these 56 effects and dragging them down onto the timeline. Depending on which row you put that effect in will dictate which model will perform that effect. So, for example, if I put this effect on the same row as the candy canes will do this effect. If I put this effect on window outline 2, window outline 2 is going to do this effect. If I put this effect on a group, then all the models that are inside of that group will do that same effect. You could tell an item is a group by the shapes that are next to the name. If there are no shapes next to the name, that's just a regular model. But if there are shapes, that means it's a group. Now this effect that we put on the timeline will only run during this section of the song. because that's the only part that this effect is covering. So if I press play, you'll notice that the effect will start when the playhead is over top of it, but once the playhead passes it, the effect will turn off. You can extend or shrink the effect by clicking either end of it and moving it left or right. You can also move the entire effect by clicking the middle of it and also dragging it left or right. If you don't want the effect there anymore, you can right click it and click delete, or you can just click the effect and press delete on your keyboard. Additionally, if you want to move the effect up or down onto a different model, you can select it and use the up and down arrow keys on your keyboard to move that effect to a different model. Now, keeping track of where you want all of your effects can be really tricky, so this is where timing marks come into play. By placing the playhead anywhere on the audio track and pressing the letter T on your keyboard, this will create a timing mark. You can create as many of these as you want, and you can even create them while the sequence is running. So if I press play, I can continue pressing T whenever I want a timing mark to show up at that point of the sequence. Now, whenever I drag an effect to put it on the timeline, that effect will instantly fill the entirety of that section between the timing marks. You can click and drag timing marks either direction to move where they are, or click it and press the delete key on your keyboard to delete the timing mark. However, because of the way timing marks work in Xlights, it deletes it in a bit of an odd way, so you'll have to click this mark that is still there and drag it over to the next one to fill in the gap. With any of the effects that are on the timeline, you can click that effect to access all of the different color settings and effect settings for it. All of these values can be adjusted to change what the effect will do, and each effect has different values you can change. For example, a lot of them will have an X and Y variable that you can move to change the position of the effect on whatever item you have it on. Some may have a speed adjustment, so you can adjust how fast it moves, and other ones may have a thickness settings to change how thick certain parts of the effect are. You can also go to the color section and enable or disable different colors so your effect will light up differently. Some effects may only allow one color to be used at once, while other effects will allow multiple colors to be used at once. Sequencing overall is a simple thing in theory of just repeating the same steps over and over. Placing timing marks, placing effects in those timing marks, editing the effects, and then repeating. The final thing you need to be aware of is the render button. Clicking this will force a render on all of the effects on the timeline to make sure they're correctly working and that they're correctly showing up on the house preview. I recommend at least pressing render at the end of a sequencing session to make sure everything is put together correctly and actually looks like what you thought it would look like. But that's it for the basics of the sequencing tab. And that's also the basics for everything in Xlights. I need a drink of water. Now, I did leave out a ton of information that you will more than likely need at some point to make Xlights fully functional for your display. But if I was to include all of that, then I'd just be making another 2.5 hour long tutorial video. But all of this in this video is enough to get you started in Xlights and making some simple sequences. Now you can either go down the path of messing with all the settings yourself and figuring out what they do and learning how it works all by yourself, kind of like I did, or going online and looking for other tutorials and other guides to see exactly what everything does. If you're looking for a complete full tutorial, then you can check out mine that I made a few years ago. I may be a little biased, but I think it's the best. And it should hopefully allow you to understand what every single setting and every single button does in the entirety of the program. But that's going to conclude it for everything today in this video. I hope everything was useful to you and that you got a lot out of it. If you have any questions or comments, please feel free to leave them in the comment section down below, and I'll try to respond as soon as I can. But before we finish, I have a little teaser to show you for the next upcoming video. Okay, you'll get a super quick flash of what they are. Here you go. More moving heads? Question mark. But anyway, that's it for today. Thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next video.